Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I am so delighted to be kicking off the new year with all of the rent to own updates and knowledge with the JJ team. We've been working with you guys for a long time, and you guys have been rocking it. A lot of your agents have benefited from the business upside, but not only that, you're making such an impact and positive difference for buyers that otherwise wouldn't have any way to get into home ownership. So kudos to the JJ team for continuously pushing pushing innovation and making home ownership much more possible for buyers that don't even realize how amazing you guys are. So kudos. I prepared a few slides. I'm not going to inundate you guys with too much information. I know that there are agents who are certified with us, so you already have a little bit of knowledge. And then, of course, some of you are new. I'll give you a little bit of background. And then I'd really like to just give you some updates and jump into some Q&A. But I do have some slides that I'd like to share. I need sharing permission. Thank you very much for your patience with my technical challenges. These guys are technically dancing to the song we were just listening to. So in your head, hopefully you're hearing the "Let's Get It Started" melody, and really that's really what the goal of this conversation is. So for those of you who haven't met me or haven't taken any training with us, I'm Rachel Oliver. I am co-founder of Clover Properties. My husband and I started this company back in 2010, about 15 years ago. We're real estate investors, but we didn't really want to own rental properties and deal with pesky tenant and toilet and trash issues. But we wanted to make money in real estate, and we wanted to do it with a purpose. So we started a rent-to-own company to help home buyers who are struggling to get into home ownership. And since then, we have helped nearly 900 families, mostly in Ontario. We have branched out to work in Alberta as well. And our mission is really to help thousands more people in Ontario hack the system and finally realize their dream of home ownership. And notice how I said not their dream home, but their dream. And that's a real major distinction, because we're helping people get their foot on the property ladder rather than having them sit out and wait for everything to be perfect. We just want progress. We want them to get on that ladder. And what that means for you is obviously generating some business. And that's really where rent-to-own comes in. Rent-to-own really delivers the unexpected. Agents that don't know what rent-to-own is are truly, truly missing out. There are unexpected advantages of understanding how you can leverage rent-to-own in your business. And I'm not speaking from this lens of you've got to know absolutely every aspect of how it works and be able to explain it in every painstaking detail. That's not what I'm getting at. What you need to understand is what role it can play for someone who right now is motivated and eager to get into home ownership and has done everything right, but they're still being blocked by the banks. That's where rent-to-own can deliver the unexpected, not just to help those buyers get into home ownership, but to help you transact right now. And when I mean transact, what I'm really saying is that most agents who work with us, who have either received certification with us or have started marketing their knowledge about rent-to-own, they generate on average anywhere from $12,000 to $30,000 in extra buyer agent commission. What would that extra buyer agent commission mean for you? And really, this is just helping 1, 2, or 3 home buyers get into the rent-to-own process per year. That's it. I mean, you can specialize in doing more. We do have agents that are focused a lot more on doing rent-to-owns and getting more people in, but the average agent is hovering around $12,000 to $30,000 in commissions from helping 2 to 3 people. So our quick agenda here is just so you know where we're going and where we're going to end up I'm going to cover what rent-to-own is, but mostly I'm going to talk about what it isn't. I'll recap what the ideal candidate looks like for the rent-to-own path, how the program works, just a quick overview, and how monthly payments work. I think that's a really important piece. And then what's new for 2025. And I'll throw in a couple of pro tips throughout. So we're going to go quickly. The reality is a lot of home buyers in today's market are eager to get into home ownership. They're craving stability. They are tired of wasting money on rent. However, the problem is that a lot of banks are saying no. Why are banks saying no? Well, because someone in on the application might have a credit score below 680. So if a couple is applying for a mortgage and one of them has a credit score of 700, but the other one has a credit score of 600, that right there will negate the application for them to qualify with the bank, even if they've been saving 5%. 5% is the minimum to get into home ownership with the banks. But you need to have perfect credit scores. Banks tend to penalize buyers who have car loans or student loans or some other type of debt that they haven't cleared yet. And it doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. It can be as much as $10, $12, $15,000 of debt. And the banks will say no. Low down payment is another issue. So when you have only 5%, that's considered a low down payment. And if you don't have the perfect score, and if you have debt, that low down payment is going to get a rejection on the application. A lot of people don't have job history or business history that satisfies the bank's criteria. And what banks are looking for is stability. So if someone has changed jobs or careers or just came out of school recently, or started up a business a year and a half ago, the banks are not that forgiving. And these people are locked out. And then, of course, people who have made mistakes in the past and had to file for a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, those people really have no hope of getting into a bank mortgage with just 5% down. And then, as though saving for 5% is hard enough for a lot of buyers because prices keep rising, well, throw in the added expense of closing costs, land transfer taxes, legal costs. Those can add up to, $8, $10, $12,000 on top of the 5% that people have been saving. And let's face it, prices of real estate are going up. Rental costs are going up. Cost of living is going up. And a lot of people are taking it much slower to save up more than 5%. And what we're saying is that that's where the rent to own process can come in, and we can solve for that. Now, what I want to point out is that most buyers don't know what rent to own is. Most buyers have never learned about it. It's not something that's explained at school. It's not something that the average buyer understands. And in fact, a buyer who asks you about what rent to or can they rent to own is, I will tell you, 9 out of 10 times not going to go through. Most people don't know what they don't know. And those buyers that need rent to own don't ask about it. And the ones who can't qualify for rent to own ask about it all day long. So, pro tip here is that don't wait for somebody to ask you about rent to own. Think about the buyers or the prospects in your database who have recently talked to you about trying to get into a home or trying to get a mortgage. Check in with them. Did they actually get that mortgage? Because they don't realize that if they can't qualify with the banks today and they don't qualify with alternative lenders and they can't afford private mortgages, they don't realize that rent to own could be the option for them. So you can't qualify with the banks, you go the rent to own route. And it's up to you to recommend that. I can't tell you how many people speak to a real estate agent, or sorry, how many people contact us and say to us, hey, I went to a real estate agent and nobody told me about this rent to own path. I did my own research and I came to Clover Properties. And then of course, those people are transacting with some random real estate agent, not you. So you don't want those leads to slip away. You have a Rolodex right now of people that don't know that they need rent to own. And it's up to you to think about who to call and to introduce them to. Don't wait for it to be the other way around. So what is rent to own? Very quick, in a nutshell. Renting to own is actually more towards owning than it is to renting. And this is a big elephant in the room. A lot of people hear the word rent to own and they have these ideas that, oh, I'm renting a basement apartment for $900. So why don't I take that same $900 and instead own some, some $700,000 home only 3 or 4 years later? And that's a big, big misconception. Renting to own is really a departure from renting and moving into an ownership position. Think of it like homeowner in training. So they don't have all their ducks in a row and they need a little bit of time to fix for that. And they want stability and they want to get into a home right now. And that's really where rent to own comes in. It primes them for getting a mortgage. The whole point of the rent to own process is for them to be able to take ownership of a property, but they just need a little bit of time to get there. And that's really the rent to own path. And they're going to be in an agreement to pay incrementally to own that home. And I'll talk a little bit more about the payments. So what I really want to stress is that, hang on, oopsies. What did I just do? I pushed the button and something went away. I don't know. There it is. Did it come back? I apologize. I pushed the button. Don't let Rachel push any buttons. Okay. Can you see my screen again? You should be able to. Okay. So really what I want you to think about, rent to own allows buyers to move into their chosen home and live there now, but buy it later. And by later, we mean that there's an agreement that essentially means that they're going to be buying that home for a predetermined price and a predetermined date. And usually that's a 36 to 48 month window. You as the agent earn your full buyer agent commission when they move in. So right now is when you make your commission, not down the road, not 3 years later. Monthly payments that these rent owners are going to be paying are very similar to a bank mortgage, but they also include equity credits that help them grow their initial down payment. So they have 5% down today, but they actually will be down the road qualifying for a mortgage. So we know their 5% today is not going to be enough. So the monthly payments in a rent-to-own agreement actually allow them to earn credits that will help them top up their initial down payment. So their future down payment is going to be much higher just by making monthly payments. The other benefit is that there are no closing costs that are needed upfront, which reduces the barrier to entry for a lot of buyers, because a lot of people don't realize that, that extra $10,000 on top of the savings for a down payment is hefty. So there are no closing costs needed to get into a rent-to-own program, and there are no fees. So unlike private mortgages where there's really high interest rates and $10, $15, $16,000 fees, none of that applies in a rent-to-own scenario. So the amount of savings that people have to put into the deal at the front is essentially helping them establish equity in the program from the beginning. A lot of agents have an easier time processing it when they think about pre-construction. Pre-construction allows you to lock in a purchase price and you're going to be taking ownership of a property at a later date. But the main difference between rent to own and pre-construction is that you don't have to wait 3 years for the property to be built. You can actually move in today. So buyers start living in their home immediately and they start building equity from day one. So they achieve the goal of stability and ownership over the course of this process. So hopefully that helps you wrap your head around what rent to own is. So in a nutshell, there are a lot of moving parts in terms of what the lenders are looking for to qualify someone for a mortgage in Canada. They're looking for all of these puzzle pieces to fit together. And the reality is there's probably about 30% of the buyer market that doesn't fit all of these puzzle pieces together today. And they don't know that rent to own is a possibility for them. So they're sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out all these puzzle pieces by themselves, trying to save more by themselves, trying to fix their credit by themselves, chip away at their debt by themselves. And they are going to get outpriced if we don't educate them that there's another way. So the rent to own path really gives first-time buyers, millennials, newcomers to Canada some time, some guidance and the stability to put all those missing pieces together while they get to live in a home that they will own in the very, very near future. And when we say own, we're talking about 100% ownership. There is no co-ownership component here. There is no sharing your equity with a third party here. This is them actually owning the home on their own. That's what we enable them to do. So another pro tip that I would like to share is a situation about Lisa and Josh. So Lisa and Josh were renting, and they decided to, to basically inquire whether rent to own would work for them. And in reality, what was happening is that they didn't quite have the income that they needed to qualify for a mortgage, and they didn't really have the down payment. They thought that they can rent to own with zero down. And what the agents are doing in this case was just answering a lot of questions and explaining how the program works and spending, 15, 20, 30 minutes at a time answering some of their deep questions about the nitty-gritty of how rent to own works. Well, I really call this the passive pitch. So a passive pitch is someone who is asking you a bunch of questions about what rent to own is, and you as an agent are just trying to answer their questions without actually zeroing in on, can this person even qualify for rent to own? Does it even make sense for me to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes talking to them about how it would work before nailing down exactly whether or not these people qualify? Because rent to own is not for everybody. So avoid the passive pitch because it is a time waster. And a lot of real estate agents burn out. They think, oh yeah, I know about this rent to own, but I don't really talk about it much. Well, that is partially because you don't know the right questions to ask to know who to talk to about rent to own. So flip the script and be proactive by just asking people about their income and down payment situation. Those are the only two questions you need to ask up front. And you need to, of course, build a little bit of a rapport before people share that kind of information with you. And then you can be more proactive in answering their questions about their suitability for the rent to own process. But make no mistake, we will do all the heavy lifting. We'll be able to actually answer all of the nitty-gritty questions for your clients. That's where our rent to own specialists come in. We do an intro call. Once you refer them to us, we will ask them details about their situation. And sometimes they uncover to us stuff that they might not even share with you. And that will allow us to give them more specific and clear guidance on how the rent to own path will actually help them achieve their goal of home ownership. And once we qualify them and screen them, we will boomerang them back to you so you can do your magic and help them find a home. So who is the ideal buyer for the rent to own path? Well, the ideal buyer in this case, for example, we have Shayna and Mike. They have about $150,000 in income combined before taxes annually. So basically $75,000 for her, $75,000 for him. They have saved about $25,000 to $50,000. So the average home buyer who qualifies for our rent to own program is anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 down payment. Remember, no closing costs are needed. So this full amount becomes their equity in the property. Oftentimes, they have credit challenges. So one of them might have a lower credit score, both will have a lower credit score. But the real important aspect here is that they are motivated to own. So they have been working hard. They think that they've been doing everything right in order to reach that goal of qualifying for a mortgage with the bank, but their 5% savings just isn't enough. And oftentimes it's because of a car loan or a student loan or a blemish on their credit that they didn't even realize. We also deal with a lot of people who are coming off of a previous marriage, so they have some previous matrimonial debt that they're struggling with or grappling with. So there are a lot of reasons why, but the key is that they are motivated. They have homeowner mentality. They're not looking for a quick solution. They understand that they're not quite there yet, and they are open to new possibilities. And those possibilities are going to have to come from you because they just don't know. So really what's happening behind the scenes is kind of like a 5-step process. We will start off with an introductory call, which will lead them to an application and income verification step. Buyers get pre-approved once we confirm that they have the income and the savings that they say they do in those verbal conversations. We will get on a Zoom call with them and we'll explain to them what their house hunting budget will look like, what their monthly payments will look like, what their overall rent-to-own commitment will be. We provide all of the transparency they need to understand exactly what they're going to be stepping into. If they're happy with that conversation on our Zoom call with one of the members on our team, then they can go home shopping, and you are their agent. You actually, this is the best part, you help them find a home in the designated price point that we provide. So you don't have to spin your wheels. You know that behind the scenes that these people will be able to go through. And in fact, one of the things that a lot of agents don't take advantage of is sending us a listing before they actually hit the streets and start shopping for a home. Send us that listing. We'll crunch some numbers. We'll let your client know what their monthly payment will look like on that particular property. And if they like how the monthly payment looks, then by all means get in the car and show them the property. So you don't have to waste time if there's any question whether or not they're comfortable with what the monthly payments will be. Now, fast forward, property passes inspection, property passes appraisal, the buyers move in, and you earn your full buyer agent commission. And on a $650,000 home, which is the average price point that we're seeing right now, agents are making their 2.5%, which is about around $16,000 in commission, just for helping buyers go the rent-to-own route, and instead of continuing to rent and try to figure out all of the puzzle pieces on their own. Now, behind the scenes, we are in the driver's seat. So of course, once you get your buyer agent commission, they are your client for life. You stay in touch with them. They might be a source of referrals. They might be a source of a future transaction for you. So you definitely want to keep nurturing that relationship. While we do our part behind the scenes, we are working with them. Think of it as, future owners in training. That's really what this program is about. We're teaching them to make their monthly payments on time. We're helping them build up monthly credits and equity. They're also improving their credit. In fact, they might be even working with our money coaches to figure out how to budget a little bit better so that they can stay on track. We customize their training to their situation. So we're doing a lot of heavy lifting, and it's very customized for the goal of helping them exit the rent-to-own process and transfer ownership into their name by a set date at a predetermined price. So the goal is for these buyers to secure a mortgage and take full ownership of their home. And that's really the kind of behind the scenes, the process. So what's new in 2025? The main thing is that the house hunting budget has improved. When we had high interest rates previously, it really reduced affordability, and not just for anyone who's entering, a rent-to-own program. We're governed largely by what it takes to qualify for a mortgage. Remember, this is almost kind of deferred qualification. They don't qualify today. So what do we need to do to get them to where they need to be? And affordability is absolutely number one. We have to protect their interests just like the banks do. We stress test them based on their current income, their current down payment, and their current debt load. We're just a little bit more forgiving on the credit, but we still use the stress test to determine their house shopping budget. So the banks just changed the multiplier they're using to qualify someone for a mortgage. Previously, it was about a multiplier of 4. Now the multiplier has gone up anywhere from 4.5 to 5 within the banks. Now, we don't go as high as 5% or as a multiplier of 5. We go to about 4.5. So their income multiplied by 4.5 plus the amount of down payment they've saved is how we determine their affordability. So remember, your first conversation with someone who's trying to get into homeownership but is getting declined by the banks is to ask them, what's your income? Multiply that by 4.5 and ask them what's their down payment and add that amount. And that will give you an idea of what they can afford. And then you can say, hey, I can send you some listings in that price point. Would you be interested in having a look? And that's really what it takes. And if they want to understand the details of how rent to own works, well, then you would introduce them to us. We have a special form you would complete to introduce us to speak to them. The other aspect that's really important for 2025 is the monthly payment. And this is really a game changer. In the past, rent to own was considered to be more expensive because they had to pay rent. And on top of that rent, they had to pay what we called a down payment credit, that forced savings to help them build up a bigger down payment. So they would say they would be paying $3,500 on a $600,000 home. And on top of that, they'd have to pay another $500 in order to save up enough of a down payment credit. Well, that is what we call rent to own 1.0. Rent to own 2.0 is where the monthly payment is similar to a bank mortgage. And it's actually better because $300 to $600 of that payment is credited back to these home buyers at the end of the rent to own process towards their down payment purchase. So when somebody asks you about what's a monthly payment like for rent to own, you can actually whip up any mortgage calculator online, grab any calculator that you're currently comfortable with, and what you'll enter is the amount of down payment that they have. So if they have 5% saved for, a $600,000 home, you would enter $30,000 and then find out what the monthly payment would look like with that bank with a 5% down payment, including property taxes and property insurance. Remember, rent to own is closer to owning than it is to renting. So someone who's interested in owning understands how a mortgage payment is calculated. And a mortgage payment is calculated based on how much down payment they have, what their property taxes are, and property insurance. So you can give them a rough idea if they want to know. That's the quick math. Those are very two shifts in terms of how rent to own is becoming a lot more accessible rent to own made home ownership more accessible to more buyers, and this makes it even that much more accessible. So I'm happy to jump into some questions. I'm cognizant of time. I understand that some of you might need to run, but I am here to, as long as you need me, to go over some of the questions. And I understand I just kind of covered a lot of the surface stuff. So I'm happy to jump into more discussion or questions.
Anna, go ahead.
Rachel, the last information that you had, the last slide is about house shopping budget and about monthly payments. Can you give the exact example? Let's say, speaking about the property for 600,000, like how do they save like you said, they're going back to credit at the end of the period of rent to own. So can you give some numbers so like it will be easier to understand?
Yeah, I love that you're asking for some numbers. I'm going to take you behind the scenes and see if I can bring up a recent. Okay, so let me pull up. I'm going to share something with you. Let me share my screen again, and I will actually walk you through what the numbers would look like. This is a $575,000 property, and I hope that's okay. It's close enough. This is what I have on hand. This is actually for a home buyer. Sorry, ignore the name. This is for a home buyer that applied for our program, and we walked them through their budget in December. And essentially, their budget approval here shows that their house hunting budget is $575. In this case, the family has a household income of about $140. Their initial down payment is about $25,000. They're going to be in a rent-to-own program for 48 months, and they're going to exit at 698,916. That's the price that'll be locked in the contract if they purchase a property at exactly 575. Obviously, when we're actually dealing with a live deal, the price might be 578, 600. There's a little bit of variances there. But if it's purchased at 575, that's how the numbers will unravel. So in this case, their monthly payment is going to be $4,101. And again, this is for whatever interest rates were active back at the end of December, so not too long ago. So $4,101. And then what's happening is $500 of that is actually being rebated back to them in the form of a credit. So $4,101 is what they're paying. So technically, $500 is that down payment for savings. So that's being added to their initial $25,000. So by the end of the 48-month program, they're going to accumulate $53,000 by doing this. So their initial $25,000 and then $53,000, and then through the $500 a month rebates, they're going to have a total of $53,000, all while they're living in a home that they will call their own. They can treat it as their own. They can make improvements and push equity up even further. But most importantly, they have stability, and every monthly payment counts. So you can see how it adds up. And then, of course, we're estimating the equity here. So we're anticipating that equity also comes from market appreciation. We know that entry-level homes are going to grow in value at a more rapid pace than, your $1 million or $2 million properties, just because supply and demand. There's more demand, not enough supply. A lot of people are trying to get into the market. So we estimate an annual appreciation rate of about 7% on every property that we do in the rent-to-own program, especially because we work in primary markets such as Barrie. You guys cover these markets, Innisfil, Georgina, all of these markets where there are still affordable homes and bigger demand for them. We know equity will grow there. So in addition to building up a down payment credit of $53,000, there behind the scenes, the property is going up in value regardless. So if they wait, for example, down the road, that we're forecasting that house will be $54,780 more than the locked-in price that they're buying it for. So that's what that equity piece means. Anna, does this kind of help you get a bit of a sense of a breakdown?
So basically, at the end of the 48 months, they will have kind of more than $108,000, right, together, because down payment 53 and plus equity.
Well, yes, the 53 is guaranteed. The equity is not guaranteed. That's the difference. So yes, in a best case scenario, if our equity estimates are accurate, then you're right. That's the total amount. But we can't guarantee equity. We can only anticipate it or estimate it.
For the bank, so then how do they evaluate the property? Because in 4 years, if they bought 575, but the appraisal maybe will appraise it at 6, like you mentioned, 630 or 650. I mean, the mortgage, what kind of amount, what amount will the owners be applying for?
At the end of the rent-to-own program, they're applying for a mortgage at the locked-in price of $698,916. That is the price that they will be paying for this property. But what we're saying is that if our equity assumptions are accurate, the house will actually be worth more on the open market by about $54,000 more. So they're buying that property slightly below market value. And this is how we enable that additional affordability and that additional opportunity to build wealth. But this is the part that is not guaranteed. It's only potential. But it's more if they continue renting, they have zero access to this potential.
That's right. Yeah. It's not about, let's say if the market not crashed, but went down. And in 4 years, it will not be it's locked for 698,000. But when the time comes, the appraisal comes with 600 only. What happens in this case? Where do they get this extra 98,916?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think in general, I have to, give you the full disclosure that even as a home buyer or sorry, a homeowner, I'm a homeowner. And I have to say my value growth is not guaranteed either. I just had my home appraised and it's worth $250,000 less than it appraised for last or a year and a half ago. So we as owners don't have any guarantees that the valuations are going to be there. What I'm basically then thinking as an owner is like, okay, if my house is not at the value I want it to be, this is not a good time to sell. I need to stay put, right? So the same kind of thinking will apply in a rent to own. So the investor that's holding title on this property knows that, okay, if the value isn't there, it's not a good time to sell. Let's go to an extension. Let's
Got
hold
you.
on to this deal a little bit longer and let it percolate. And what that really means is that the home buyers still have the stability that they want. They are still making the monthly payments like they would if they had a mortgage. The only difference is that we're deferring the actual transfer of title.
Oh, so it's possible. So it's very important, right, for the people to know that, let's say, and it will help them maybe to, get more money, to save more money, to add to that, difference between the appraisal and the locked rent to own price.
You got
Okay,
it.
so
And
there is a possibility. There is a possibility, which is important, right, at this kind of market to know.
absolutely. And that's what we have. I hate to say it, but that was our go-to strategy for a lot of home buyers who were in our program, and it was time to exit in 2024. And I would say 30% of the deals were not valued at where they needed to be because they overpaid for the property in the first place when we had that crazy bidding war, everybody buying at 50, 60, $100,000 over asking. Well, now we're paying the price for it 4 years later or 3 years later. So absolutely, those deals, it wasn't anyone's fault because at the time those properties did appraise.
Okay, got you. Yes, so to make it clear, so when we talk to people, to potential buyers, rent to own, it's the people who has bad credit history but good income. Is that correct?
You
And
got
and the people who doesn't have enough down payment and still making good money.
You got it. They're making great money and they've saved at least 5%. So 25, 35, 45,000, whatever that means. And their credit isn't allowing them to get a mortgage with 5%. That's really the main barrier. They've got 5%. If they can qualify, they should go all the way to the bank. But if their 5% is stopping them, they have no other options. They can't go to a B lender because B lenders want 15 to 20% down payment. They can't go to a private because a lot of privates want, well, now they're back to 25% minimum down payment, not to mention the crazy fees and interest rates. So these folks really have only one clear path if home ownership matters to them, and that's the rent to own path.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Amazing questions. As always, Anna, always smart questions. All right. Anyone else? Do we have Tifa on the line? Is Tifa here with us today?
I think
She
Alexander
was-
has a
It was
question.
here. It was here.
Hi there.
Hey,
Good
Tifa.
here.
Nice,
Great presentation. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Does your team know about your story in helping Kathy?
I mentioned it we do share our successes, and on one of the Wednesdays last year in October, I believe I share, or November, I did give everybody a little spiel about how we helped Kathy. But if you want to go ahead and give them your version, you're more than welcome to. I'm on the road, that's why my camera's off. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I totally get it. It's not so much about my spiel. What I wanted to ask you is that aspect of bringing up the rent to own solution proactively versus passively. In your case, did you bring it up first?
Yeah, so Kathy was an online lead from over 2 years ago, and the first time I spoke with her, the light bulb went out in my head, and I said, you know what, you sound like a perfect candidate for this program. And I gave her the rundown, and she took, I guess, interest to it. And she went on, believe she met with Stephanie then over Zoom or a call of some sort. And then she disappeared. And I guess she went to start saving her down payment or work on whatever she had to work on. And so she came back to me last year in July, and said, Tifa, I'm back and I'm ready to go with the Clover Property Program.
So if you didn't initiate the conversation with Kathy about the possibility of her getting a home through the rent to own path, do you think you would have transacted with her?
Absolutely not. No, she actually was not in any credit wise. She was not in any shape or form to go on her own. So Clover was the only program that at the time seemed suitable for her. And yeah, no, she wouldn't have known about it.
Okay. So what I love about you sharing that, Tifa, is that you activated a conversation with a lead that came in quite some time back. And you brought it to her attention that rent to own is a path for her. And she wasn't quite ready at the time that you even brought this up. But because you were unique and gave her a path and hope for stability and opportunity, she didn't go to another agent. She came back to you. So you retained her loyalty, even though she wasn't even more than a lead.
Right. And actually, what's funny about that, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but because she was a lead in our lead bucket, we have had, and the history shows that we have had multiple agents in our in our team reach out to her, and it seemed she still remembered me. So that was unique, and I really appreciated her for it.
Okay, so case in point. Now I know Jake's done deals, and I know there's other agents on the team that have used the rent own knowledge they have. But guys, I honestly feel, to Tifa's point, and again, this is not rehearsed, we're having this conversation off the cuff. I honestly feel that you are leaving a lot of money on the table with a lot of leads, because you're waiting for leads to ask you about rent to own, and it really should be the other way around. So Alexandra, I see your hand up. Oh, did we lose Alexandra?
I think
It's all
Alex is frozen.
Oh, wait, it just glitched for a minute. Alex, are you still there? Yep.
Go ahead, unmute, go ahead. Happy to hear your question.
No
You're
pressure,
muted.
Alex.
You're
No
muted.
pressure.
Oh, you're still
She's
muted.
she's attempting to unmute.
She's trying to find how to unmute herself.
See, I have the same problems. Alexandra, I totally get you.
At the bottom, at the bottom.
I don't know which buttons to press.
Maybe I can see if, I don't know if I can do it on my end. Let me see, Alex. Let me see if I can do it. No,
Alex,
I can just
can you
ask
type?
you.
Maybe she
This
can
is
type.
so weird. Yeah, maybe you might have to type it in the chat.
Okay, no problem. If you guys can just read it out once it's there. Does somebody else have a question that they want to unmute themselves? Oh, Mary, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question. Who's on title for the 4 years? Just the investor?
You got it. Yes. So
Okay.
we're really families helping families behind the scenes, and we have investor families who are qualified for a mortgage. They're on a waiting list. They have the 20%, they have the closing costs, they have great credit, and they can qualify with an A lender at the bank. And they use their qualification and give, because they can qualify with a lower rate, it makes the affordability factor realizable for our rent to owners. So they pass on that affordability to the rent to owners, which is why the monthly payments have become a lot more manageable for the home buyers in our program. But yes, it's the investors who hold title, and there's an agreement between the rent to owner and the investor, and Clover Properties puts those agreements together to make sure that it's win-win and equitable for both sides. But of course, both sides still get independent legal advice. So there's a lot of due diligence and checks and balances to make sure that this is set up properly.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
think Alexandra is typing. We should wait.
Well, Jake has a question while she's typing.
Go ahead, Jake.
Don't
Yeah,
put more pressure on her.
I was just gonna jump in and add because I mean I've worked with you and Neil for I don't know like 6, 7 years now at this point, and I've done quite a few deals with you guys. Exactly like I think today you said it perfectly about the people that ask about rent to own. Generally, they're the people that think there's no money down. I'm just paying a rental amount and I'm gonna own a home in 2 years. The people that really benefit from rent to own are the people that don't ask about it and don't know about it. So what I've learned is I get a lot of tenants that call me, a lot of people just looking to rent, and for whatever reason that they're looking for rent. I mean, we've had one that we did together that they were business owners and they made great money. They just weren't claiming great money, just like most business owners. So they couldn't qualify. So you guys gave them the 2 years they needed to get the 2 years on paper of good qualification and own a home. There's other ones that we've done where they just had bad credit scores. So I think the biggest thing I've learned with all the deals I've done with you guys, it's about knowing what to listen for and asking questions versus waiting for someone to come to you and ask about rent to own. When someone says, I can't buy because I'm not showing enough income, or I make most of my income in tips, whatever, stuff like that. That's where you should start asking them about, have you heard about rent to own? Could this work for you? And I think the other part that I've learned is that rent to own's not for everybody, obviously. If there's somebody that they can qualify in 2 months conventionally, it obviously doesn't make sense for them. But for the people that need rent to own, it's fantastic. So just, I guess, learn the questions that you should be asking and learn what to watch for in these people, and you can do a lot more deals. It's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a brilliant share. And again, the questions are as simple as what's your combined household income? Whether you're declaring it or not is irrelevant. What do you actually deposit into the bank? That's the conversation you need to have, an open conversation. And you have to put them at ease. You have to get them to a point where they're going to want to not just disclose the information, that they're going to disclose it honestly. Because if you're having a conversation and you don't have that rapport where they're going to tell you with all honesty, you're still going to be spinning your wheels, right, Jake? They have to be able to be comfortable enough to get vulnerable enough.
Exactly. And the way that I've worked it into my workflow, I get a lot of tenants that reach out or people that are looking to move, and automatically when they first reach out, especially tenants, as agents, it's better for us to ask for the info up front because a lot of people we can't help. And when you're reviewing that info, just have it in the back of your head that if these people have like a low credit score but good income, if they have money saved up and but their stats aren't great. Like for instance, I've had tenants reach out and they're looking to put 5 months down on a rental just to get in the door of a rental, right? Like they've got the cash sitting there, they've got good income, and with the state of our rental economy, for them to get a house, whether it be bad income on paper, pets, whatever, they need to put extra money down. That's an automatic green light for me that, hey, I should be talking about rent to own with these people because they have the cash they need already. It's just about knowing where to put it and what makes the most sense for them. So just watch for those things when you're qualifying rental clients, when you're having those initial onboarding calls with buyers. And if there's something that's holding them back conventionally, it's a good kind of segue into how I can help you. And just the one other quick side that I've learned is that these people, if you help them and hear their situation, and try to go above and beyond helping them, they will refer you business in droves. Like those are the people that will stand on top of a mountain screaming your name for everyone to hear. So if you listen to them and ask those questions and help them, it's not just one deal you'll do with rent to own. It could be one deal and then you help their kids buy a house, or there's so much more that can come from it just from helping.
I think Alexander can talk
Yeah.
now.
You're
Thanks.
back.
Sorry, I was sending
Yay.
to my settings and I'm like, I don't know what was going on. Okay, I have a couple questions. So like how bad can the credit possibly be if everything else aligns?
Oh,
You know what
that's-
I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. Don't overthink it. I mean, at the end of the day, most people don't even know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
What's the credit score? To be honest, I don't even know what my credit score is. Credit Karma emails me regularly. Check out your score.
Yeah.
So don't get in too far into the weeds of it. I mean, at the end of the day, if we have to quantify it, we're looking for people who have a credit score anywhere from 550 to
Okay.
That's
Okay,
the
perfect.
that's the average range of the people that are successful in getting approved and qualified for our program.
Okay.
Obviously, there's exceptions. People who have 500 credit score can work as well. There's a lot of markers. We're not just qualifying them on paper. We're also qualifying them emotionally. So if someone has the right income, they fit into the low credit score box, but they're a douchebag and they're not coachable and they're a know-it-all and want to take no responsibility for the issues that they're currently facing and don't want to admit that they need to make changes, we will not accept them into our program, because the reality is you guys get your buyer agent commission when they move in, but our team is stuck with the douchebags for 4 years trying to get them on a call, trying to get them to make make choices that reflect better habits. Oh my God. And instead of helping more people get into our program, we're then sucked into dealing with the douchebags. And we've learned the hard way that we don't want to work with those people. So we're not just qualifying on paper and income. We're qualifying on their personality and intent and motivation as well.
Okay.
Rachel,
and then, sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish it.
And then there's another question in the chat after that.
And did you say how we can get connected with you to be certified?
So if anyone is interested in getting certified, that's a great question. If you, I will post my link to my calendar. Just set up a quick call with me. I usually like to have a quick intro, get a little bit more info about you, and then I'll send you an invitation to the training. That's how it's always worked. I know some of you bypass the call with me, but I highly encourage it because it really does, it helps me guide you better. Help me help you. Hang on a sec. I will post in the chat here the link to my calendar. So, and even if you are certified and you want to revisit some thoughts or questions, feel free. I am so happy to support the JJ team. You guys are awesome. Okay, so I'm posting.
So we do have some agents as well on here who are not on the team. So that's great to get that contact information so that they can also reach out. And that was a question in the chat. So go ahead, Anna.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. If the person had the bankruptcy in the last 7 years, will they still work with them? No, it has to be after 7 years.
Oh, that's a really great question. So when it comes to bankruptcy and consumer proposal, we need to make sure that they are discharged. So it doesn't matter how long they've been out of the bankruptcy. They could be out for a year. They could be out for 2 years, 4 years, 7 years, 10 years. We don't really care as long as they're out of it. So it's been closed. And the same thing with a consumer proposal. Consumer proposals are actually a little bit more flexible because as long as someone is going to be closing out their consumer proposal in the first year of their rent-to-own term, we'll put them into a 4-year rent-to-own term, which gives them 3 years to rehabilitate their credit so that they can then qualify for a mortgage, even with that consumer proposal finishing 3 years prior to that. So that's a really important distinction. But if someone and we get this all the time, people go through our process of getting qualified. We just designate their budget and they start shopping, and then they contact us saying, you know what, we decided to file for a consumer proposal. Stop the shopping. We can't help you. If they're entering a consumer proposal and it's going to be more than a year before they exit it, they can't rent to own. So they have to be discharged from a consumer proposal either already or at least in the next 12 months. Then
what is consumer proposal? What is that?
Consumer proposal is where you get a break from the amount of money you owe. So say you have, $50,000 in debt, you file for a consumer proposal, and that means that you have to only repay maybe 10,000 of it, and you get to repay it at a specific schedule. So you make $500 a month payments for a specific time frame. And when you are finished paying out within that time frame, you're considered to be discharged from it. So you're now free and clear of all that debt. but you have a major blemish on your credit report. And there's no way you're going to be able to get an A lender mortgage with just 5%. It's not going to happen. Even, to be honest, even at the end of the rent-to-own process, if someone has a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal on their record, so back to your question with the 7 years, if they have a bankruptcy on their record, in that 7-year timeline, even if they complete the rent-to-own program, they're not going to be able to get an A lender mortgage. They're going to have to exit into an ownership position with a B lender. But it's still better than renting, because what's happening is that we're grooming them to qualify with a lender that wants a bigger down payment, which they're going to have a very hard time figuring out on their own. So our program, back to the customization, right? It's 80% systemized, 20% customized. So if we know that that's a blemish for them, we will tackle it head on up front. We'll have the right people in play to guide them so that the exit is predetermined. We know where they're headed. It's not left up to chance.
Okay. And the last question I have for self-employed, are your investor looking at the gross income or at net?
We're looking at net, so before taxes. No, sorry, gross, before taxes. Gross. Before taxes.
Well, I can see even in my client's case, they were not claiming at all a good enough income. They just had a business that was getting good income, and like Rachel said, it's partially customized. So they were able to overlook that in that case and still get them into the program, because their T4s would have been like 20,000 a year each. But in reality, it was a lot more than that.
We're all, to some degree, writing off more expenses and downplaying our income, right? As business for self or commission based, we all have that tendency, and I get it. The main distinction here, Jake, is that although they're understating their income on paper today to the CRA, they can't keep doing that if they want to get into home ownership. So back to my suggestion, that they have to be motivated and they have to be willing to take the guidance, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to claim more income in order to qualify for a bigger home. If they want a more modest home, they claim less income. You can't pay less taxes and buy a big home. They don't work. It's always an equilibrium. You pay more taxes, you buy a bigger home. You pay even more taxes, you buy even a more bigger home. And that we follow that protocol. So again, there's people out there who think that they can scam the system by going the rent to own route. And we stop them in their tracks, because this is not about scamming. This is about hacking. Big difference. Any other questions in the chat?
No, that was great.
Well, thank you for your time this morning. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. And then have an amazing day, and we'll see you all next week.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Rachel.
everybody. Have a great weekend.